All right. Good morning or good afternoon. Depends where you are. Welcome to the episode 8 of AI Business Asia podcast. My name is Leo Jiang, your host. Today, I had a pleasure to invite Henry Zhang, founder and CEO of Flowise AI, to join our show to share the amazing journey he has embarked on, a couple of years ago. Just a bit of background. Flowise is an open source low-code platform designed to help development of AI application, and they have get really great traction in the early days, focused on open source community. Also, the very few company got backed by YC in 2023. Today, they're tracking 31,000 stars on GitHub. Probably ask Henry to share what does that even mean to people who are not familiar with GitHub, but it's apparently a very, very big achievement. So yeah, Henry, welcome to the show. Maybe start off, just tell us about yourself before we embark on some interesting questions.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Henry, one of the co-founder of Flowise. So I was studying, my background is in electronics engineering. So I started out with electronics engineering. So I have been working in the semiconductor field for about 4 or 5 years before I embarked my journey onto the software engineering. So after about 4 or 5 years in semiconductor industries, I'm kind of tired of the whole industry back then, and then I decided to switch myself into software. So that's how I got my last job at Fidelity Investment, and from there it's kind of like the how Flowise, the idea of Flowise came from. And after about 2-3 years working there, so I started Flowise and then joined YC. So the rest is history.
What is Flowise? If you can summarize it, as we like to say, ChatGPT, please summarize this whole thing. Summarize it like I'm 5 years old, so the audience can understand what Flowise does.
Well, I'm not ChatGPT, so I'll try my best to summarize.
You better.
So Flowise, on a high level, it is a tool designed mainly for developers, but also for not so technical folks, to be able to create their own agents or assistants in this era of LLMs for their own use cases. So for example, if you wanted to create your own version of ChatGPT that can answer the questions that is specific to you or to your companies, so you can do that using Flowise without having to write a single line of code. So all of this is like we provide this drag and drop interface similar to when you are playing, when you're a child, a Lego. So you connect the Lego blocks together and then build your own agents that dedicated for your own use case. So that's the idea of Flowise.
Nice. Sounds like a very easy to use application. Where this idea came from? What was your conviction? Why you started Flowise?
So I think back then so ChatGPT launched 2 years ago almost, and at that time I was working in Fidelity Investment, right? So ChatGPT just launched, and 2-3 months. So I started to see a lot of frameworks like LangChain, Llama Index, started to pop up. And internal within our department, we have this what we call like a smaller demo day when we work on something interesting that can improve a company workflow, our team's engineering practices and things like that. So I wanted to create something that can consume a knowledge base from Confluence, Jira, and all these document sources, and be able to answer questions. So because otherwise, for every new joiners, even for the old people that have joined Fidelity, when they onboard to a new platform or a new project, they have to go through a bunch of setups. They have to look for different sources, and then some information is missing here and there, and they have to reach out to the right person. So there's a lot of hurdles ones have to get through to set up a project. And I wanted to create something that can take all of this contained within that chatbot, so people can just ask question about it. So that's the why I started to kind of like explore different possibilities of how to do that. So I just out of one weekend just created this little chatbot using LangChain and share it to the teams. And of course we have this what called a smaller demo day where we share it across different teams within the organizations. And when I share it to other teams, I quickly saw the needs and the requirements from the other teams as well. So they're not some of the teams are not very technical, but they needed something that they can create themselves. So at that time, my real job is to work on the low code automation tool for our business process. And I just sort of came to me that why not create something that combine the experience that I have, which is designing the low code tools with large language models. And at that time, as I mentioned, ChatGPT just launched. There isn't any tool, something like this. I just created that, launched the GitHub, more like a side project back then. So
Okay. So you started off with internal project, or I guess experiment within Fidelity or your the company
yeah,
employer working with at the time, and then you found there was a great use case within the organization, and then
yeah,
you publish it on GitHub as open source.
yeah. That's the very good summarizations. Yep.
Is that even legal, like to publish something you worked, you created for a company on GitHub?
But that's not under the company IP or something. It's something that we work on personally, and we see if we wanted to improve a company in the processes of engineering practices. So it's
Right.
not under company's IP. So it's something
Sure.
that we all take. So there's this what we call bi-weekly Tuesdays off. Not
Yeah.
off, like, but people work on something that might be interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm like just trying to give you a curveball, see how you react to that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So what happened after that? After you launched it on GitHub, GitHub. At the time, there wasn't anything like that. Oh, you were saying for the audience benefits, like people who doesn't understand the large language models. You mentioned about Llama Index and LangChain. So these
Mm.
are the tools were available at the time, help people to build their own application, somewhat similar to Flowise. So people knows there was some reference point.
Yeah.
But so for you, like, did you create something completely new, or what was it different that you created differently from the tools out there?
Yeah, so there wasn't such tools back then. So all of those frameworks like LangChain, Llama Index, those are like coding frameworks that allow developers to write code, basically, chain different large language models together and perform, series of actions. And to be such a tool with a drag and drop interface with a local approach, there wasn't such tools back then, especially, when it comes to the large language model stuff. So it was a completely new territory and completely new field. So,
Mm,
I wasn't sure how would it pan out, but yeah, we, just throw it to the GitHub to see anyone likes it.
okay.
And the market responded. So the community responded, and we gained a lot of tractions back then. Yeah.
Tell me. So do you still remember the date when it was released?
Yeah. Not exactly, but somewhere around April, 2023.
2022. 3.
23.
Okay.
So launch it
How
to
was the
the GitHub.
reaction like from GitHub?
GitHub was okay because GitHub, is not like Twitter. So I think the part where it blew up was because of Twitter. I launched it on Twitter, and quickly Harrison from LangChain, funny thought, he reached out to us. He saw this, and then he asked if we wanted to do a webinar. So I think from
Mm,
there we kind of got a lot of exposure. At that time, LangChain has, it's quite a popular framework. People love it, and they have been doing webinar series with companies. So they have a big audience, right? And when we did the webinar series together, that kind of snowballed from there. And a lot of people kind of notice us, check out our GitHub. And
mm,
we have a lot of YouTubers, people from the large language models research area have been sharing about how they can create something without getting too much complexity in writing the code. So if they wanted to
mm,
have to test some ideas very quickly, they can use Flowise to do that. And again, yeah, there wasn't such tools back then, so it was kind of like new for everybody and interesting, especially when you have this drag and drop interface. When it's shared on Twitter, people love it. People love to see those kind of animations, those kind of
mm.
moving objects, graph. So that's how, yeah, I got started.
So early on, you were mentioning about the stars on GitHub, and also I guess Twitter is different
Mm,
social platform.
yeah.
how many, out of curiosity, like how much gain do you have after this launch on Twitter? So after this launch on GitHub, like, do you gain
Yeah,
substantial followers on Twitter and which translate to GitHub?
it was crazy. After we launched on Twitter, I mean, of course, we already have it on GitHub, so people would check out the GitHub repository, right? And I think we got like 2,000 stars within a day, and it just kind of like skyrocketed from there. We have like the very exponential growth in terms of the GitHub stars. I think within 2-3 months. Yeah, I think we launched April, and by the time we got into YC's around June. So I still remember when we got into YC before that, around June, we've got around 15,000 of stars. So
Wow,
just in about 2-3 months, not exactly 15, but I think close to 10. Yeah, close to 10. After YC, then we finished off with around 15, 16. But before joining
mm,
YC, which is around 2 months time, we got 10,000 of stars. Close to that.
wow, 1 or 2 months. What does that even mean for people who don't understand the significance of these
Yeah.
stars?
I would say it's more like a developer mindshare. So people who start a GitHub repository will be the one that either, they like the project, they wanted to try it out, and they just love that there's a new project, there's a new territory that came out from ChatGPT era, and there are new innovations. So people can use the GitHub repository, they can download it, they can try to run it on their own computer, and all is free. So
Mm,
people from all around the world, there's no limit, there's no paywall. People can just go to the GitHub and, on the computer, they just need to enter two commands line, npm install Flowise and then npm start Flowise. They will have the whole applications up and running on their own computer. So that's how easy it is to get started, and that's why developers love it. Yeah.
mm. Interesting. So just so I understand, so like if you say 10,000 stars, does it mean 10,000 developers like it, or there's more to it?
Yeah, most likely people from GitHub are developers. Yeah, you can say that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so each person can give you a star. I guess that's what I mean.
Yeah. It's more like
Yeah.
a mind share, if you get what I mean. Like people love the project, people want to share about it, people start it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you watch the Three Body Problems, the episode on Netflix. I read the book also.
Mm-hmm.
The end of it, they like at the end of the human, I guess, at the end of the time, like Earth is
Mm.
doomed, and then people start giving out stars, like real stars, like in the universe as a gift.
Oh, is
You know,
it? I didn't. Okay, I
you
didn't
didn't
see
watch.
the movie.
Okay, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I watched like first 2-3 episodes, but then I kind of lost interest from there.
Really, you gotta watch that one. Three Body Problems. Anyone who haven't read the book or watched the Netflix, please do. It's one of the most mind blowing science fiction
Mm.
that I personally like, and also like Barack Obama had a very high regards on this movie. But anyway,
Right.
very different topic. Okay, so you got great attraction, and you talk about YC, right? So
Yeah.
obviously everybody knows about YC. Tell us about the YC experience. What do you think are the key reasons, or were the key reasons that you were selected into YC?
It's kind of funny story. So when we applied to YC, we never actually thought that we would get in because when I look at the past history, I don't think a lot of the Southeast Asia founders or companies made it to the YC. I mean, most of them are from companies from, of course, from the States, from US, and from Europe. So, we just thought of applying it, didn't think of it. And then after we applied that, we actually forgot that we did apply, and the invitations to interview actually um, goes to the spam box, right? So we didn't notice that. And
Right.
after I think around 1-2 weeks, then out of one day I just thought of like, okay, we did apply YC, right? So did we get interview or something? So I was just like talking to my co-founder, and then I checked the email, and I didn't see any inbox. Then I just clicked the spam box, and I saw, oh shit, there's this interview from YC. we missed that. So it's like 1.5 week late or something. And then I quickly, you can imagine my heart is like pounding so greatly that time.
Yeah.
And I quickly sent back the email and say, hey, we missed the interview. Like, can we do it again? And I think that they're very responsive. Just a few minutes later, they responded back, yeah, no problem. They can set it up for another meeting for next week or something. So yeah, so then we set up a meeting for the interview, and we got into the interview. For those who don't know how the interview process of the YC is, just 10 minutes. So 10 minutes is all you got to present yourself, to present the company, and they will decide if you can get into YC or not. And I didn't do too much of preparations. I didn't even know it's 10 minutes. So when I got into the interview, I was like talking about myself a little bit. And then, Hutch Tagar from one of our YC group partners, he kind of stopped me there. So he said, okay, stop. I want you to explain the company. So I have introducing myself for around 1 minute, and then I got kind of like, oh, stop. Okay, so right now I'll introduce company, like how this company is doing. So I think from there, because we already kind of gained tractions, as I mentioned, we have around 10,000 of stars, and we have proven that we have got a lot of developer mindshares, a lot of tractions for open source, and I think that's the biggest reason the let us in. Yeah.
Hmm. So break that 10 minutes. It was 1 minute introduction, and he basically cut you off and asked you like explain the company.
Yeah.
And was that all the time you have and after 10 minutes they will tell you the result whether you're in or not?
Not usually after a few minutes because they have a lot of interviews, right? So they usually wait until the end of the day, which is, US time, I don't know, 6, 7 p.m. late at night.
Sure.
They will either text you or email you. So we got an email from Hutch saying that can we meet up tomorrow for another interview again? So we were like, this is gonna be hard. Maybe we have to answer some hard, tricky question or something. Because when we look at some of the past experiences that people share, they either get a yes or no at the end of the day. If there is a second interview, that means the partners are not so sure about the company. They wanted to ask more tricky questions. They wanted to kind of like drill down on you, right? And we were like, okay, we're gonna do this again tomorrow. And yeah, so the next day we got into the meeting, and Hashtag just straight up asked, would you guys like to join YC? So we're like, yeah, of course. So luckily
Wow.
there was no tricky question or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he just asked if we like to join YC, and we said yes, and then yeah, so that's
So really there wasn't much of interrogation in the second interview. So everything I guess the whole thing was sold in the first 10 minutes. First interview within that 10 minutes time frame.
yeah. I think even before that, so before we apply to YC, right, we have to fill up the questionnaires, the forms, right? It's like
Mm,
2, 3 pages or something, and
mm,
it's quite popular. It's available out there in public as well. The
mm,
so before you got into the YC, they review the forms. They already kind of know a little bit about your company, your tractions. I mean, is when you fill out the form, is the time for you to show your traction of company, your teams or whatever, right? So don't one advice that I would give to future applicants is that don't fill out a lot of informations on the forms. I mean, don't be too lengthy when you kind of putting a response there. I think be short and concise so that those YC partners can review it and know exactly what you're doing. And as you can imagine, they receive I don't know 10,000 plus of applications per batch,
mm,
and it is a lot for them to go through. So be short,
mm,
be concise, and be able to show what you got, whether it's your attractions, whether it's your team, whether it's your background, whatever, right?
mm,
And so that's
mm,
how they already knew we got some tractions, we're good, we're off to a good start, and that's the one of the biggest reasons they let us
mm.
in.
Interesting. Interesting. So you think you did a good job during the interview?
Did I do a good job in the interview?
Yeah. Or was that more
No,
about the information you fed in the form and the traction that you had with the GitHub?
yeah, I actually don't think that I did a good job in the interview. Naturally, I'm not like the very outspoken person, like, those kind of CEOs who can like talk like a
Mm,
big dreams or things like that. I'm, an engineer, so I just talk what I know, what I want the Flowise to become, and why I
mm,
created Flowise in the first place, right?
mm.
And yeah, I think just talk what you are best at, and coming out from the heart. And I think they can feel that, they can sense that, and they can know that you have a dream and you wanted to go big. And yeah, so that's the whole idea, I suppose. Yeah.
That's it. I think that's the point I'm trying to get across. So it's not about speaking the big words and be fluffy. It's more about being authentic and direct and about what you
Yeah.
want to achieve and what you achieve. So I think that's
Yeah.
a great advice to a lot of founders who are thinking of applying for YC in both how they should do the due diligence and how they, perform it during the interview. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
mean, Henry, that was a really good insight.
Yeah.
What do you think
Thank
is the biggest benefit of being a YC-backed startups? I mean, now it's been a year, right? Like,
Yeah.
apart from the money.
The biggest benefit is the network. So it's like a it's like when you get into an elite school like Harvard or MIT, you get a lot of these different networks. So we have this internal, what we call a book face community, where all the YC founders will be in that. It's like the Facebook for YC community, right? And you get to ask questions, you get to schedule meetings with partners. The thing about YC community is that everybody is so helpful. It's not like when you ask some questions to strangers, like strangers will be like, "Hey, do I know you? Like, why do I want to help you?" Everyone has been on the same journey, right? They knew exactly what the problems we are facing because they have faced it before. They have been on a journey. So you're kind of on the same path as everybody to create something big. And everybody is so helpful that wanted to help you, with asking no returns, right? That's the biggest thing that I found out, I think,
Mm.
that we gain from YC, which is the community.
Mm. Well, okay, okay, great. Obviously, the money is important, I suppose.
Yeah, wow. That's definitely, yeah.
All right. Actually, just out of curiosity, have you had a subsequent round yet after your first investment?
No, so yeah, we haven't properly raised a fundraising round yet,
Mm.
but yeah, so we are looking to raise it now because after YC ended, we spent about a year to try to grow the company and grow our
Mm.
teams. And right
Mm.
now we have doubled our tractions, which is now, I think, yeah, YC ended, we got 15,000 star something, and now we
Mm.
have like 31,000. We are
Mm.
processing around tens of millions of predictions per month, and we grew our headcounts to 5. I mean, not a lot, but from 2 to 5, we onboarded 3
It's a
more
double.
people to our team.
Yeah,
But yeah, we're looking to grow much further now. Yeah.
nice. Let's talk about growth. Firstly, like, who are your clients? Obviously, you have a big developer communities, which I guess don't pay you.
Mm.
Who is paying you?
For now, enterprises. But we
Okay.
are launching our cloud version. So we actually did launch our cloud version, but it is still on a private beta. So you have to get an invitation code. But yeah, same as a lot of open source company, two ways that you can utilize your open source project is to have a cloud hosted version. So what I mean by that is that open source, if you are using an open source project, most likely you will have to download it, you will have to maintain the upgrade yourself, you have to host it on your own platform, right? And whenever there's new bug fixes, there's some modification that you wanted to make, it is very hard to maintain. And with the cloud hosted version, it's actually more catered towards the small, medium businesses where they don't want this kind of a maintenance headaches. So they can directly use our cloud services where we manage everything for them. So they can just log in and use it. So the cloud versions will be one of the monetizations that we have, and the other one is the enterprise plan. So today we support some of the world biggest company AWS, Thermo Fishers, and different companies in using Flowise within their organizations. So this company will often have the on-prem servers where we help them to deploy Flowise onto their service, or even they have their engineering team to do so. But the idea is that they have their own Flowise version deployed onto their on-premise servers, which they can use internally to create agents.
Right. Okay. So if I understand correctly, there are three layers to your I guess service strategy. You have open source strategy, which is about servicing the community, get as many developers as possible. Out of that, you will service the enterprise clients on a private deployment based on their own needs. And aspiration is built on a cloud hosted version for companies or maybe developers who doesn't have the bandwidth or capacity to build their own environment. Is that the right summarization?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now I've interviewed quite a few founders. Recently I've spoken to Bob from Vivet as well. So I think open source strategy is a key pillar to a lot of AI companies, especially in the early days. And it's quite often not something people understand as how you can monetize it. I'm still curious, like for your own experience, like, I mean, how much of your time you have to spend on servicing the open source community versus people who are paying you? How do you justify your effort?
Yeah, it is a fine line, right? We have one philosophy is that we don't want to be like if we develop, for now on, if every features that we develop will only goes to the cloud, that will goes against why we started as an open source in the first place. One of the main reasons we started as an open source is because we have been a big users of open source, and I personally have contributed to a bunch of different open source projects, and I love the community, right? So by being said that, our core philosophy is that every new integrations, every new community features will goes into the open source project. Only certain features will goes into cloud. So how to judge that? That's a very good question. So basically, from my personal perspective, if these features is much more enterprise like features, as in like some of the SSO, some of the multi-tenancy stuff, and this would be the features that goes into cloud. But otherwise, if we are working with different partnerships like integration with Redis, with IBM, with AWS or something, this will always goes to open source. The way that we think of it is that whenever we have this new feature requirements from community, we think, would this benefit a lot the majority of the users, right? If it does, then it makes sense to go into open source. And if these features is going to only cater to a small group of people, which are from these particular industries or enterprises, and if yes, then these features go into the cloud or the enterprise. That's how I think of it.
And do you see people willing to pay, like with the current paid clients, from you had some really nice logos. Do you think they were paying you enough for you to keep up the efforts and time?
I think it's a long process because a lot of open source company during first few years, they would not earn a lot of revenues, not enough to cover their burn rate. So that's part of the game. As an open source company, your aim in the early days is to gain as much traction and gain as much market share as possible. So you can see like, a lot of examples like Dockers, what else, Redis, those are open source in the first place. Eventually, people will start paying. The way that I think of it is like, the more people trying to use Flowise, because the way that Flowise design is that we allow developers to build plugins or integrations on top of Flowise. So it's like a WordPress, so people can build many different integrations on top of Flowise. We wanted to build this whole ecosystem that allowed more people to contribute but also supporting the whole life cycle of the agent's creations. So with
Yeah.
this whole ecosystem in mind, the aim, at least for me in the early days, is not about earning the revenue, it's about earning the market share. And we do already have some features that so we have a public roadmap that we share it to our community. What would be paid features, what would be open source features, right? So people
Mm.
already know that these certain features will be paid. So it's not like at some point of time and then we stop and say, hey, you got to pay us everything, right? So we don't work like that. We wanted to be as transparent as possible and be really clear about what we are targeting in the future, what goes into open source, what goes into cloud. So it goes back to your question, will people be paying enough for you? Certainly not at this stage, right? It's not enough to cover our burn rate. But again,
Mm.
thanks to YC and a lot of angel investors that we have that believe in us, we are still able to keep it running. And we already seen, so we released the private beta. We already seen a very good conversion rate from our customers. And moreover, when they want to host Flowise, they have to deploy on one of the cloud services like AWS, Azure, or whatever, right? And they are
Mm.
already paying around $20, $25 similar amount to those cloud services. So it's not like, yeah, you can run Flowise locally on your computer, but you cannot deploy to your own website, to your own applications. In order to do that, you needed to pay one of the cloud services to do that. So
Yeah.
since they're already paying that, so it kind of makes sense for us to release the cloud so that they don't have to pay the other providers, but they can directly use from us.
Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah.
I see it. Yeah.
I 100% agree with the strategy of adding an end-to-end capability other than they have to set up the infra layer, then set
Yeah.
up the Flowise. So can I ask a direct question? Like you said, basically right now you're not profitable or you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
reach the break-even point.
Mm-hmm.
And what's stopping you being a profitable company is a choice between market share or money making.
Mm.
So how do you know you are gaining enough market share in the speed where you're going to run out all of your money?
Yeah.
Like where is the fine line? Like, I don't know where burn multiple is. I don't
Mm.
intend to ask in this public podcast, but I think for a lot of founders, you always have a limited runway, right? And
Yeah.
fundraising, which
Yeah.
I'd like to talk more later on, is not easy, especially in the current day and time.
Yeah.
For to what point you want to push for market share until it become profitable?
Personally, for me, so every founders have different ideas, right? But personally, for me, I think 6 months before your runway finishes, that's how it's not like saying that, okay, 6 months before that, you have to turn on the pay features. So 6 months before that, before your company goes out of business, you have to make sure that you have a clear path towards the profitabilities, right?
Mm.
And prior to 6 months, which is about 1 year, you have to work on the things that will allow you to go to that path. So
Mm.
for me, it would be like if your runway is like can last you for 2 years, after 1 year, you have been working, in open source and you trying to gain as much market share as possible. And the way for me is that after 1 year, we started to think of what can be the monetization strategy for us. Like, how do we do that? Like, you kind of have to start working on that. You don't want to work on that until, okay, let's say 6 months before your runways finishes, then you say, oh, I don't have enough time to develop that, right? So
Mm.
1 year before your company goes out of business, you have to start working on certain features or certain, think of a way that can allow you to start earning revenue, and there's a clear path towards the profitability.
Are you
By being
on that path, being
so, yeah,
profitable?
we being profitable, not at the moment, but we are on that path that we have started the monetization strategy, right? So the cloud and the enterprise, and by going down further, keeping development and releasing to the public, we believe we are on track to reach profitability. I mean, not so soon, but we're definitely on the track given that our runway. Yeah.
What are the key challenges that you see right now in terms to being profitable or to build out your
key challenges in a profitable?
Yeah, what are the key challenges stopping you from being profitable right now?
So again, like it is, when you launch in open source, it is similar to like a double-edged sword. So it can be good, it can be bad, right? It depends on how you are able to draw the fine line between not pissing off the open source community, but also be able to entertain or give advantages for your cloud users or paid users, right?
Right.
One of the so key
How do you
challenges,
piss
as I
off the
mentioned.
open source community?
How do I what?
You
Piss
said
off
that
the open source community?
not pissing off
Yeah,
the open source community. What would piss them off?
licensing is one of the big reasons. At
Um,
one point, I think we wanted to test different strategies, right? One of the strategies that we thought of is we launched as the MIT license back then, which is the most free license. People can use it, can commercial and everything, and we changed it to a more restrictive Apache 2.0 license, where we restrict people to kind of white labeling it. So as in you cannot get rid of Flowise logo, you cannot get rid of all our contributions, things like that. But you still can use it in commercial settings. So I think with that, open source community don't like it because it does not follow the true spirit or essence of the Apache 2.0 license. So that's how I learned my lessons. Do not change your license randomly or as you want. So then after that, we change it back to the original Apache 2.0 license. Yeah.
Do you see competitions in your space? Because as you said, you were one of the early ones. How is it? How is the competition? Do you see any competitions?
Yeah, definitely. Like as every field, you have competitions, right? So I think one of the biggest benefits is that there's a lot of no-code tools, right? But when they think of Flowise, it is more like a low-code. So there's a difference between low-code and a no-code. So oftentimes people say low-code, no-code, but no-code is something like Zapier when when you're targeting towards business users which don't have any technical expertise, and they can use it, connecting their spreadsheet to the Google Docs, things like that, right? But for Flowise, there's a not steep learning curve, but there's a little bit of learning curve. So people have to learn about, at least have to have some sort of a knowledge about LangChain, Llama Index, or even ChatGPT, API, those kind of stuff. So in that particular space, low code space, there isn't too much of a players out there, especially in this LM's field. I think there's three, four of them, but there's only one that is open source. So so that's why I
Are you
think
the only one? Is that what you're saying?
no. There's another one. Actually, another two. Two of them are in open source as well. So I think the best way to kind of view the competition. So the other founder shared to me the other day. Docker. I'm not sure is your audience know about Docker. So Docker is like a containerized environment where you can download applications from Docker registry. But there's this page where Docker created for different Gen 8 products. And there's one category called applications platform where we allow people to kind of like use low code interface to do that. And from that category, you can see what are the similar companies that are doing this kind of like the achieving the same thing as well. Yeah.
And how is this related to the competition question?
So just give an overview of what are the competitions out there, like what are the companies that are doing the same thing. Yeah. So you just show the list of the companies. Yeah.
Okay. So do you think competition is good in your own opinion, as you're fighting against these
Definitely.
people who are? Is it good?
Definitely. Definitely. If you have no competitors, that means your area or the business area that you're targeting is not good. I mean, there isn't any opportunities, right? So if you have competitors, the more the better. It can kind of push you to be much more, kind of like push you faster. So you kind
Yeah,
of have this, like for me, competitive person. So I wanted to, kind of beat this guy. I mean, not beat this guy, but beat this company and, be
yeah,
pushing our teams to really, grow our community. So it kind of
yeah.
push you to be more competitive and it's good for the ecosystem as well. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Okay, very good. I want to talk a little bit more about the technology of all these different models, especially you being on the tooling aspect. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you think, and whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or Mistral, Google, all these models, as fast as they progress, do you think there's a risk for you as a company who are building tools,
Yeah.
workflows?
The one advice, like for me, I don't think there is a threat to us yet. So the reason is because as a dev tooling company, our Flowise is aimed to be platform agnostic. So we are not only having certain models and or certain providers. So we work with every different models, different providers, different integrations, right? And it's something that we grow together with all these different vendors. So whenever OpenAI launch something new, a new models, a new features, a new tools or something, so we can integrate within Flowise and allow our users to use it. So it's something that we can grow together with the advancements of the different models and different provider as well. So what I would like to say is that it will be hard for you if you are trying to create like a simple applications just using a particular model is like a wrapper. So if you are creating a wrapper, not to say that it's not totally useful, but you have to think of how you can be more specialized in the application that you're doing. So for example, Perplexity, right? I believe many of you heard of Perplexity. So it's like the kind of challenging the Google territory. So it's like a search engine. So it is using different models under the hood, plots from Anthropic, OpenAI, and etc. And from a high level, you would just thought of okay, it's just a wrapper on top of these models. But under the hood, there's a lot of planning and reasonings that they do on the application level, on the infrastructure level as well, to make it become so useful that people are not able to clone it easily. Two things that I would think of is when you're creating something, create something that can grow together with the different vendors. And if you're creating some sort of like a wrapper, you have to have your own orchestrations application logic that is dedicated for your own industries. Yeah.
Mm,
Because one thing that I was thinking of is that OpenAI as the large language model company, they would not possibly go into one specific industries, like let's say accounting, and create a very customized solutions for let's say this particular accounting firm or these industries, right? So a lot of us have a shot of creating these vertical SaaS applications using these large language models. But if you are creating a horizontal platform like us, create something that can grow together with the different vendors. Yeah.
mm. How much is your success coming down to the product itself versus your distribution? And let me unpack this question. So quite recently, I spent a lot of time in our own business. We help a lot of startups to grow, and I noticed the amount of AI startups, whether they were true AI startups or they were former SaaS companies, all kind of AI companies now. So it just it just blowing up. Like there's a true proliferation of AI companies now. Like I think largely because the cost of building a product is so much more substantially lower. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone can be a 10x developers, therefore the ability to develop a product should be 1/10 the price, but in theory.
Yeah.
But at the same time, your clients, the target audience, the users, they hasn't changed. So the amount of developer on GitHub, for example, wouldn't change. Therefore, I felt a lot of the challenges around reaching your intended audience, market your product to the right people so they can give you the PMF, right? So my question to you is, what do you think the reason to success between building a great product versus, package or market a great product to the right audience?
Because I don't know about the vertical SaaS because I can only speak from my experience operating as an open source company. The way that we think of is that we actually, funny enough, we don't have a plan for that. When we started out, or even until now, we are still relying on the word of mouth. My idea is that if you create a product that is good enough, I mean for open source, that is good enough, people will notice it, people will use it, people will share it. And that's how we grew Flowise in the first place to what it is now today. So like success to me feels like when you can, like personally for me, that I have a very awesome open source community. And that is already a success to me. To grow a community from scratch is not easy. And we did that organically. So we didn't even pay any marketing. We haven't even spent a dime on marketing or anything until today. It's just people creating courses on YouTube or Coursera, Udemy. Like the community that we have built together from the day one is something that I'm most proud of, and that is the success to me. So to become a more successful open source company is to grow a bigger community, to build a better relationship with our users. And in terms of the cloud and enterprises, I think the success to me from there is to be able to help the particular clients to build a very successful solutions for their own use cases. So oftentimes when people try out our product, is from bottom-up approach. So that single person from that company heard about Flowise, try out Flowise, and they have these specific use cases they would like to achieve. So success to me for that is to be able to really help them to put that into productions, to actually use it and help them achieve what they want. Two different, speaking of open source and enterprise world, these are two different success definitions for me.
That also resonated with me a lot. Just recall what Bob shared with me. I mean, his own experience. If you win a developer who basically tasked to build a product, and if this person present a solution to a CEO to say, this is the solution I need to build this product, why would the CEO to say no? I think open source as an entry point, building that trust and experience is a great way to penetrate a large enterprise. Exactly. It's not easy, I'm sure, because still there's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of hard work in building the solution in the first place. Growing community is never easy. I guess it's getting harder and harder, if you're not early adopter of certain technologies.
Again, it's kind of very different for different companies in different industries. I can only speak from open source horizontal space, but it could be different for vertical SaaS, which is not open source. You might have a different path of reaching your audience, which I don't have prior experience. So yeah.
Right. How is the journey? So starting was, as you say, April 2023, right? So I think just over a year and a half.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Felt like you start off really strong. How, with the traction, open source community and YC backing, how would you describe the current state of your company and yourself being a founder?
Yeah, being a founder is not easy actually. Every day you wake up, you have a lot of things to handle. This is not the case when you are employed as an employee. I mean, of course, if you're in a busy company, you have a lot of tasks to do. But speaking from experience, you're given a task, you're given a certain deadlines, you go and finish that. As you're starting as founder startups, there's a lot of things that can come to you during the day when you wake up. Some production issues, some server is down, some customer is complaining, and you need to talk to investors, you need to talk to users. So those are different things that you need to think about. Our current stage, I would say, is pretty good. We're still growing our teams. We are raising our round right now, and yeah, so basically we have doubled our growth since YC. I wouldn't say that we have profitability or we have like big revenue because we still haven't turned on the monetization strategy for us fully. But in terms of the open source community, I think I'm proud of the team. We did a pretty good job. Being able to bring, so we have seen like people from big companies have been using Flowise as well. Microsoft, actually, yeah, we have like Microsoft people that are using Flowise, and of course AWS and a lot of different companies. So this kind of like give us motivations,
Validation.
a boost for us saying, okay, people trusted us, and like how do we make it better? So yeah.
How much are you raising now in your coming round?
Is
Is
it
that
good
something you
to
can share?
disclose in the
Or you
public?
can? No, no, no.
Yeah,
I mean,
unfortunately, not
only if you.
not on the public podcast.
Okay. Okay. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people watching this. There's a big part of a VC community that working with AI Business Asia. So I do want to give this opportunity to you to openly address the VC communities. Like, why
Definitely.
should they look at Flowise now? Obviously, the YC backing is already a great validation. You share a lot of your vision. You're about to turn on your monetization strategy. What would you like to say to the VCs that you want to attract to? Maybe give out few bullet points. What kind of a VC are you looking for what kind of support that you want from them, and why should they invest?
I think the biggest thing that we look for is, I've talked to a bunch of VCs, from joining YC until now. There are certain traits that I like to work with, especially when it comes down to VC, is that they have prior experience in open source. I mean, every VC works different way, right? So some are very good at vertical SaaS companies. They wanted to have the companies earning revenue 3-5 million ARR. What I am looking for is that someone that trust the open source, have been working in open source, especially like if you look at companies like HashiCorp, Redis, those companies in the early days, at least in the first few years, they are not earning much revenue, but they have a large community. So the VCs that we like to work with are the ones that have experience in open source, experience in infra tooling, experience in developer tooling as well, and of course in the large language models and the AI agent space as well.
Okay. We're probably coming to the end of this. Probably two more things I'd like to ask is, one, if you could have started Flowise again from scratch, back in 2023 April, what would you do differently?
It's good questions. I think one thing that I would have done is to think about the monetizations, at least have some thought of how you can monetize it. So back then, we never actually thought about that. So it's just like we want to grow this great open source company and be as big as possible. Yeah, I mean, it's true. If you're good enough, Of course, you have to think of, you at least have some thought of how you can monetize it. So not every business can have like, hundreds millions of funding that you don't have to worry about. There's like small potato like us, which is not like, the hot startups, like the hundreds of millions of backing funding. So you kind of have to think of these kind of certain scenarios, like how would you be able to, when it comes down to that, how would you be able to sustain yourself? So at least had that thought in the early days and start to work slowly towards that path, not waiting until seeing that your funding can only last you for additional, 1 year or 6 months, then you start to think of it. Yeah.
Mm. That's great. Thank you so much. Definitely touching. It touches my heart because speaking out of founder's mind, we also look at like pathways or runways.
Yeah.
Constant battle between expansion versus being profitable, because it's a choice you're making to spend investors' money, when to spend that money.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this journey, Harry. I think I would really love to help you and through this podcast, and hope you will impact a lot of founders, people who are watching and listening to this. Henry is a great friend, so we know each other for I think over a year now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
From Malaysia, he live in Ireland. I really like the journey.
Thank you so much.
And I truly felt you're doing something really not just as a product inspiring, but also as a person. So from being an Asian, it's not easy, to build this product, outside of Asia. So I genuinely hope great for yourself and more founders from Asia to join YC and making impact. Thank you so much for joining our podcast.
No problem. Maybe one day we can share about your story as well, of starting your business as well.
Yeah, sure. One day you should do an interview for me.
We can urge. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay. Thanks, listeners. This marks the end of our episode 8. If you're willing to hear more about us, please do reach out. Maybe just a bit of advertising. Like we're upgrading our website, so we've been growing quite quickly as well. So we're looking for more people who are willing to come to our podcast to share your perspective. So please do reach out.